The first rule about Fight Club is that we do not talk about Fight Club. The second rule about Fight Club is that we do not talk about Fight Club. Since we've established that I can't talk about this movie, I'm going to break the first two rules and talk about this movie. What do I think about Fight Club, directed by David Fincher, starring Edward Norton and Brad Pitt? I think this is one of David Fincher's most overrated movies. That does not mean I hate it. Does not mean I hate it at all. I actually do really like Fight Club, but I do think it gets a little overly praised. And when you start to say that it's better than, let's say, a movie like Seven, that's where I gotta draw the line. Fight Club is a movie that is not really story driven. It's theme and idea driven. Now, I'm more of the opinion that if the story is good, then the themes surrounding the story are going to mean that much more. If you have a movie that's solely built on themes and you have a flimsy story to hold it all together, I'm not really going to be all enthralled with it. However, David Fincher is one of those notable exceptions because David Fincher is such a precise and a very detailed director that if he can do a movie that's solely driven just on themes and ideas with a loosey story, I'm going to give it a pass because, like I said, Fincher is so meticulous that he can make it work. And with Fight Club, he made it work. The story of Fight Club, it's not really there. It's not really much of a story to latch on. It's not really much of a story. You know, you have Edward Norton. He plays this guy who is just mundane. He has a boring life. Nothing about him is interesting. His life is very materialistic driven. He has a boring job, and he gets fulfillment by going to these self-help groups. Then one day, this woman named Marla Singer comes into his life, kind of causes havoc. That leaves Norton's character being empty again, until he meets Brad Pitt's character, Tyler Durden, and the two of them start their underground fight club. It's pretty much the story of the movie. It's not really a lot. It's not really anything overly. It's not really anything that's overly bombastic. It's the ideas and the themes that this movie really expands upon. And like I said, since it's Fincher, he does it in a very expert way. The themes in this movie are great. The exploration of the themes is fantastic too, like the exploration of masculinity, of how the Generation X views, materialistic items and shit like that. The movie crafted everything very, very tightly, and you do get sucked in, and you're all enthralled with what you're seeing. But for me, like I said, I'm more of a story guy. Themes and ideas, they're cool, but I prefer the progression of a story and seeing the story unfold before my eyes, instead of a movie that's just exploring ideas and themes. Now we got that out of the way. Let's talk about the other stuff. Let's talk about the cast. Edward Norton as the narrator. He is fantastic in this movie. I love Edward Norton as an actor. He is awesome in Fight Club. Brad Pitt as Tyler Durden. He reminds me of Patrick Swayze's character Bodhi from Point Break. This larger-than-life, philosophical, mystical figure who just spouts out these philosophical things. And Brad Pitt is playing the Generation X version of Bodhi, the mid to late 90s version of Bodhi as Tyler Durden. And I think Brad Pitt is fantastic. He does excellent in this movie. And he and Norton have really good chemistry with one another. And I like the reveal of who Tyler Durden really is. And I like how the movie dropped these subtle hints and subtle clues throughout the film. It's like they plant these seeds, which I thought was pretty clever and really well done as well. Again, that goes back to David Fincher being very meticulous and very hands-on in his movie making. Of course, if you had not seen Fight Club, I'm not going to reveal too much about Tyler Durden's character, because I think if I do, it'll take away the appeal when you first see it. But just note that it's a really interesting twist, that when you go back and rewatch the movie, it makes sense. Though I think there are certain scenes that where you gotta you just go with it. But for the majority of it, it makes sense, which I give a lot of credit, which I can get behind. the whole idea of the underground fight club is pretty cool, and we do get to see some fight scenes, and they're very graphic, they're very brutal, and I love them. You know, I think to me the best one is where Norton is having his fight with Jared Leto, and he beats the holy hell out of Leto to the point where his face is all mangled up and bloody. It's very brutal. Now, this movie got a lot of flack for being very gruesome and brutal. It's not really gruesome and brutal all throughout the movie. I think people just focus so heavily on those scenes that they forget that there's more to this movie than just those fights. Again, this movie is very theme and idea driven, not really action driven. And when you see something brutal, you're just gonna latch onto it because just because you don't like it. I think, even though I think this movie is overrated, you're not giving it enough credit by just doing something like that. You know, because you're discounting all the other good stuff that happens. You know, you're discounting the relationship between Norton and Pitt. You're discounting the relationship that Norton and Meatloaf's character, Robert Paulson, have, which I think is actually really good. Which I think Meatloaf and Norton, in the very few scenes they have together, I like the budding friendship between their characters. It feels very genuine to me. I also like the relationship that that Marla Singer has with Tyler Durden and Norton's character. I think, and how she's always in Norton's life. And when we get to the reveal at the end, more gets revealed about Marla Singer as well, which I thought was pretty cool as well. And I just like the performance of Helena Bonham Carter in this movie. You know, she's known for playing these kooky, off-the-wall characters, and Marla Singer's no different. And Helena Bonham Carter, she's really good at, like I said, playing those kooky, off-the-wall characters. And she fits this movie perfectly. You know, this movie is not grounded in, we'll say, this movie's like grounded in very heightened reality. You know, and a lot of that has to be with the music by the Dust Brothers, which is actually pretty cool. This movie is really trippy visuals, which is great. I love the cinematography by Jeff Cronenworth. It's a very mid to late 90s. It's a very late 90s grungy, gritty style, which I think fits this movie perfectly. The special makeup effects when people are in the fight club, they're all done very, very well, very realistic. Like I said, the performances from Norton and Pitt are fantastic, but the supporting cast around them is just as good as well. You know, whatever story is in this movie, I thought is handled really well. The themes and ideas are fully explored. The characters are well fleshed out. So like I said, even though I do think this movie gets a little bit overrated, it is, again, it's still a good movie, and it gets its points across in a natural way, and a lot of that has to do with David Fincher and his meticulous direction. He directs this movie with meticulous precision. The man is a marvel. I love Fincher. He's my second favorite director of all time. Okay, well, those are actually my thoughts on Fight Club. I mean, there's a lot more to say about this movie. Well, again, I am not someone who's qualified to talk about the exploration of themes and stuff like that. Like I said, I just talk about the production side, the acting side, and how I think about a movie overall. And overall, I think Fight Club is, again, it's a very, very good movie. There are certain things I would like to see more of, but overall, for what it is, Fight Club, this is damn good. I'm going to give it a solid 9 out of 10. This is a damn good movie. I'm not going to get, and the twist at the end, really, really clever, and the way they planted the seeds for it was also very, very clever and well handled. So yeah, for me, Fight Club is a 9 out of 10. I like it, though I stand by when I say I think it's overrated. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Fight Club. Let me know what your thoughts on this movie are in the comment sections below. Like this video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.